Hi, this is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. Today we're going to be looking at the time collection options for Dynamics NAV. This could be for 2015, 2013, earlier versions, later versions. So stay tuned. It's a good session on one of the great time collection options for Dynamics NAV. Today's focus will be primarily on clocking in and out for a shop environment, whether that's for production orders where you make a repetitive product or for a job costing shop where you maybe have longer duration jobs. You're really concerned with accurate actual costs, and that can be direct costs where people are working on welding or bending metal or cutting or something like that, as well as the indirect cost where they're sweeping up an environment or doing some cleanup work. Any kind of indirect cost that may not be directly applied to a job, but you still want to capture their working time within the shop environment. So that's what we're going to go through today. I am going to use several different pieces of paper. You can't really see it, but I have a barcode scanner in front of me. You will hear it beeping as I scan things. Some of the products that I'm going to scan today are going to be employee badges. So this is a report that comes right out of Dynamics NAV. So yes, you can get a barcode printed right out of Dynamics NAV. And this is for the different employees. So we have Annette, we have Linda, Mark, Peter. These are all different badges that would then be cut out and put into a plastic badge holder, something like that, so that the employee can scan who they are. Next, we're going to be looking at a production traveler. So in this case, we have a barcode that represents both the production order number and the operation number that they will be working on. So each operation will have its own barcode to scan. Now the barcode itself captures that this is a production order. So I don't have multiple scans to get into the production order. I scan that one barcode. It knows that it's a production order, what the number is, and what the operation is. Same thing is true for the job side. So when I have the job traveler printed, this barcode tells the system this is a job. This is the job number that I'm using. This is the task on that job that I'm scanning into. You could even go a step further and say this is the planning line that I'm scanning into. In my case, I only have an example here where it's the task level, but you can go one step deeper if you need to. And then finally, the last thing I'll be scanning today is an activity sheet. So this is where we're capturing indirect cost or secondary activities on a production order or job, or not related to a production order or job, just activities within a shop that people do. So if I'm doing regrind, that's typically something that happens in a plastic injection molding type facility, where they would scan the production order they're working on, and then the material that they need to regrind, they're going to scan in and say, I wasn't doing what I actually needed to do. I had to regrind some of the scrap, and so I'm scanning in that that's what I'm doing. I still want that cost applied to the production order, but I want the people who are supervising that job and looking at that job to understand that I'm doing probably a non-value added activity. I'm having to regrind some of the scrap that came out of that run. Could be break time. Typically, you don't have to clock into a break. You could clock out, and that would be significant enough. You could do station sweep, so where you have to go clean up a welding station where there's a lot of slag everywhere, or you have to go and clean up a tubing area in the back end where you want the warehouse to be nice and clean for the employees to be able to move around. So that's an activity that may not relate to a specific production order or job, but it is something that they're doing to improve the company or to improve the workspace. So we want to make sure we capture that time because it is a value add to the business, just not necessarily to a specific production order that we can capture that time to. Now this is a user defined list, so you can come up with what your own activities are, and then you just typically have this printed out, kept in maybe a plastic sleeve that stays with group of machines, near the time station, several different places within the shop so that they can scan those quickly. Now today I'm going to be using a just corded barcode scanner. You don't have to use that. It could be a wireless one. There's guns that work for this. So I'm just using the simple one that I have for demo purposes. Now I have the Dynamics NAV client running. You don't actually need it on the workstation that is doing the time collection. In this case, everything is contained inside of a browser. Now this does not mean it's going through the internet. This is a local client, so it is connecting to my server on my local network, and it is capturing the time through the Wi-Fi or through the network jack that is connected to it. If you are in a hosted environment, there are ways to open up those ports so that you can connect to a hosted or remote server, so that would work as well. But I am in a browser, but I just don't want people to assume that it's internet facing. So this is dependent on your environment and how you set up the network. Okay, so to start with, we're going to scan in. So I'm going to walk up to my terminal with my badge. Today I'm going to be a net because it's the first badge I have. So I've now scanned in. I've created a time card for the day. I've done nothing else, but the system now knows that I have clocked into the system. It has built that time card for me, and it is waiting for additional time to happen. If I don't scan anything else, the system has the ability to essentially clock me out or clock me out of this screen, not off for the day, but it'll just clock me out so that it'll go back to the waiting screen for somebody else to scan. Now in my case, it's a demo environment, so I have it where that auto clock out feature is turned off. So I'm going to go ahead and scan back in, and this will stay open as long as I need it. So now it's waiting for some other activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these production orders I have, and I'm going to scan it. And so I've now created the first activity. Now if I'm a net, I'm going to walk away. Okay, so the system again would automatically clock me out, and I would come back later after I've done some work. The system is going to track from when I clocked into the first punch in for the day for my payroll time, as well as my activity time on production order. So it's a different clock in punch for the time on that production order. So if there was a 5-minute delay, 15-minute delay, I'm going to have 15 minutes of inactivity time, and then it's going to start running my active time on this production order. So it is now tracking for me when I clocked into it, and when I come back up and I clock out or I scan into a different production order, it's going to remember that time. I can also build in rules. So when I scan the next production order, you're going to see this runtime goes to 5 minutes. I have my minimum time set for 5 minutes. So even though I'm in and out very quickly, I want this to capture that I worked on something for at least 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and scan my next one. And you can see it leaves the previous activities there. It is now clocked off. So if I click on that activity, you see that the clock off option is grayed out. I can no longer clock off because it's already done that for me. It's closed that punch. Now there is an option so that if you have specific machines that people can clock into 3 or 4 different activities or 3 or 4 different machines, so they're doing a bunch of setup, but then the machines are running themselves, you can have it so that those people clock into that machine and the machine runs without that person. So it can split their time across several different machines. So maybe they're setting up 3 different machines all at the same time. So they clock in once for each of the production orders, they do their time, and then they clock out of those production orders, and it's going to split her time across them based on how you had the system configured. So right now we're on this activity. It is capturing my time. It's recording that I'm doing work now on this other job. And you're going to see some additional information over here on the right hand side. So as a shop employee, I now have additional information coming from Dynamics NAV because I've clocked into that production order. So yes, it's probably on my traveler, but now I can see it in real time on my screen. So I have a bill of material list. I have work instructions for this operation, so I can ensure the proper seal on the impression. So there's different activities that I can be seeing on screen just based on the punch in that I've done. I can also link to documents or drawings that I have linked to this production order. So I can get a lot of information out to my shop without having to print a whole bunch of paper or send out additional emails or any kind of information to them. Just by scanning in, they can see additional information right on their punch screen. Now the bill of material is interesting. So I just have one item here. The bill of material actually has two items on it. One is a backward flushed item. So based on my output, it will flush out a specific amount of the component as consumption. In this case, this break is set as a manually flushed item. So now I have the option to come up and consume how much of that break I want. So I can come up and say, well, it expected that I needed 101, so I'm going to just record 10. I've consumed 10 for the time amount that I'm doing. And then it confirms, are you sure you want to do that? And I say yes. And it says, okay, components are registered. Would you like to register additional components? So take me back to that window. I'm going to say, no, that's okay. But that's where it would go. Now in this case it just shows one, but if I had a list of 500 bill of material items, that's what would display here. So it's giving access to information and access to parts of Dynamics NAV that you probably didn't have access to before, especially if you're filling out a paper time card. Not that that's a bad way to do it, but this is a way of getting more accurate time in and time out, more accountability as far as what people have consumed, what output has been posted, and we haven't covered that yet, but we're going to. So it's giving accountability to your shop and giving accuracy to the costing, to the reporting of what's being done. It's empowering your workforce to make the entries of information, the cost to the production orders, the cost to the jobs, accurate and accountable. So it's a very powerful system in that regard. Okay, so the second part of this is output. So this production order requires some output when I'm finished. So I have the option to come in and say output. And it's going to know that I'm outputting item 5000. Now this production order only has one operation. So when I do this output, I'm creating finished good inventory in my system, or at least I'm creating the entries for that, and then someone could review and post if they need to. And I can also record scrap right from the output section. So I have both options here. If I am recording scrap and I have scrap codes configured, I can record a scrap code. If it was a lot number or serial number item tracked item, then I would have those options available as well. This item 5000 is not, and so it's not displayed there. And then I have my messages block down here at the bottom where I can add additional comments to this output where maybe I want to give a bigger description of why the scrap occurred. So that's an option for you there as well. So as time goes on, they can either clock off here or they can go and scan into another production order, which is what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and scan this one. Now, obviously, I haven't been talking for too long, so you can see that just another 5 minutes has been elapsed. If I was at the 6-minute mark, it would bump it up to 5 minutes. Now, that's a configuration option, so it could have kept me at 5 minutes if that was my incremental time, and I rounded up or down depending on what was closer. In my case, everything rounds up. So that's why I have 5 minutes on those. If I had been talking for 10 minutes and just blubbering on, that's the time that would have occurred. Now I've clocked into a production order, but I'm doing a different activity than what's really for that operation. So I'm going to go ahead and scan into my regrind. We talked about that one earlier, and you'll notice that it changes the description of what I've clocked in to do. So it still knows that it's a production order, still knows what operation on that production order, and it knows when I clocked in and when I clocked out, but now it also knows what I'm actually doing. So I'm doing something other than the standard, or I need to have an activity for everything that could possibly be done on that particular task or operation. And then it's going to capture my time and eventually all be done. Now this regrind is specific to a production order, so if I was not clocked into a production order, it would not allow me to clock into regrind. So I'm going to go ahead and scan that one again, and it did let me. Well, it shouldn't, so I'll have to check on that. But the regrind is set to null, null, null. Now it technically shouldn't have blocked me, so I'll have to find out why that occurred. I'm missing a setup option on it. But I'll give you an example of one where you don't need a production order. So one is called Station Sweep, and I'll show you what that looks like. So now you see there's no additional information with it. So there's no line number, there's no operation or job, there's no production order information. I am now doing a non-production order activity. And so it's capturing time that I'm still doing work in the shop, but I'm not relating it to a production order. And then eventually I'll clock off of that and the time will fill in. So we're going to go ahead and clock out, and we're going to go take a look at Dynamics NAV and what you're seeing on the other end of this. So I'm going to go into my departments, which is where my time collection is going, and I'm going to look at a time card for Annette. That's who we just filled out. And so we're going to see, okay, production order. I can see what machine she ran on, 5 minutes of runtime, injection press, 5 minutes, assembly, 5 minutes, and then she was doing some station sweep. So exactly what I saw in the time module, but now I'm a supervisor. I'm looking at the time. I'm seeing I can either approve the time, I can close her time card. So maybe she's gone for the day, so I could close that card. Maybe she accidentally closed it and I need to reopen it for her, so I can do that from here as well. If I'm Annette, maybe I want to record expenses. So maybe I'm an outside employee, I'm out in the field somewhere and I need to record that I stayed at a hotel or what my mileage was or something like that. I can do an expense entry right from my time card, and then that goes through an approval process as well to create the payables to Annette. So options there. Some good information is recorded, so you see these fact boxes over here on the right. We have 0.25 total time, and this is in hours, and it's all runtime at this point. It would have shown me setup time had I entered any setup time. It also records the output. So if I had consumed those 10 items, or not consumed, but output the 10 for the production order, this is where that information would have gone. The consumption goes to the consumption journal. We're not necessarily interested with that here, but we are primarily concerned with output, so you can get a efficiency factor for employees on how long they worked and how much output they got based on that time. So that's a great piece of information. Now I'm doing that on a time card basis. I could also come back to my time card approvals. So now I'm a manager looking at all of the time cards that I have available in my system, reviewing the total time. So I have 7.42 hours here. I can see when they punched in and when they punched out. Now I obviously keyed in a bunch of time to build up the hours, but it's going to review for you and show you indications where there's problems. So in this case, they all have problems because I keyed in either extra time that wasn't recorded as a clock in or clock out, or I was missing setup time, or I didn't get all my runtime in, or some factor is causing a validation issue. And then the system's going to track what those validation issues are. So what was expected versus what was actually recorded, so that you know where to look, what to look for when time is being approved. And so then I can approve those entries. I could always filter by an employee so that I'm seeing just one person's time at a time before I make those approvals. Lastly, there's payroll adjustment worksheet. So regardless of what payroll system you're working, if I have an employee that gets overtime pay after 8 hours in the day, the system is going to track when did they clock in and when did they clock out. If that's 10 hours, then it's going to say that's standard time for 8 hours, and then it's going to pull out the extra 2 hours and move that to overtime. So you will see the -2 for standard and a +2 for overtime, and then it's going to send that over to the payroll. Now that doesn't have to be Serenic payroll, it can be, but it could also be ADP or any outsourced payroll service that you use. So there's templates in place that you can use and modify as needed to fit to your payroll specifications. But the payroll adjustment is going to help you break out what's standard time, what's overtime, what's double time, all based on shifts and employees and what their configurations are. And there's a good deal of reporting that goes along with it. I don't have time to go through all of that today, but I'd be happy to go through this product in much more detail with you on a one-on-one session. So feel free to reach out to us. If you like the content we're providing in this video and in our other videos on YouTube, feel free to like our videos, subscribe to our channel, pass them around to your colleagues and business partners so they can see what's out there and what you're doing to improve your business and make your business workflow easier. So I hope you like this video. Again, please subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and reach out to us with any questions you have. Thank you very much for your time. We'll talk to you soon.